I'll make a bunch of new friends, adventure that never ends.
No. Obviously it's more complicated than that. I'm not just gonna make a video that's just the word no. If you somehow don't already know what Tales of Tanorio is, it's an original creature capture game that released on Roblox a couple of weeks ago. If you don't know what a creature capture game is, why are you here? It's basically just fake Pokemon, and they have original creatures. It's pretty much the same as every other creature capture game. You go out on an adventure to catch a bunch of little guys, and you use them to defeat whatever the replacement for gyms is. But this game, it was gonna be different. It was gonna be extremely high quality, get updated frequently, and the developers were going to communicate about basically everything that was happening behind the scenes, which is surprisingly hard to find in this genre. After a couple of delays right on the release date, the game's finally out, and I think I can now confidently say I've now correctly predicted that 2 creature capture games everyone was excited for aren't as good as they were expected to be. I'm 2 for 2! But why do I think this? The unanimous opinion from everyone else seems to be that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, so surely if pretty much everyone else thinks that this game is amazing, I should agree, right? Right? Well, if I did, I probably wouldn't be putting this part of the video in the script, would I? Let's take a closer look at Tales of Tanorio, and see if we can figure out why I'm just not that big of a fan of it. Before I start nitpicking like most things about this game, I'm gonna cover everything that will happen to you in a normal playthrough so you have a clearer idea about this game if you haven't played it yet. You start out in your hometown of Tanuku Village, and the story is that you're in debt, screw you. You get a job at the local Tanorian laboratory helping out Professor Iroka with stuff related to researching Tanorians. Because of this, you get to choose a starter Tanorian, with your options being Rabush, Charkyle, and Chuakwa. You're also joined by your neighbor Kira, who is this game's equivalent of a friendly rival type character. You're given Tanokans, which are this game's equivalent of Pokeballs, and then you're free to go out onto routes and do your classic battling and catching. Battles are pretty much the same as they are in any other creature capture game. You hit the opponent with a move that is good against them, and then it dies. The type chart is pretty much the same as in Pokemon, but with some strange additions? I would assume there's also a bunch of fancy new moves that do new stuff that's not in like anything like Pokemon, but I would not know. All of the moves I found were very basic. Also, from here on out, I'm just gonna call them Fakemon games instead of creature capture games, because that's the more widely accepted term outside of Roblox, and also creature capture game is very hard to say. After getting through the first 2 routes, you get to Oxworth, which is basically just another town, but it has a museum. You gotta go to it for research purposes, but it's closed because someone stole an artifact from it. So you go find the guy who stole it, beat him up in an annoyingly difficult battle, and then you bring the thing back to the museum, which is actually malachite, which is more important to the story later on, but right now it's just who cares. You're then free to explore the museum until you get to the end of it, where there's some guy who says stuff about the lore and I did not pay attention to him at all. Next up is Route 4, because Route 3 is actually just a part of Oxworth. It's initially blocked by a bunch of Growhogs, but the guy who stole the stuff from the museum comes back and moves them out of the way, as long as you don't call the police again. After Route 4 is the Pontero Pasture, which is revealed to be the place where the guy who stole the stuff lives, and also his name is revealed to be Endu. He says the only reason he stole the malachite was because he wanted to be a very strong trainer, so his parents would actually believe that he can go on his own adventure and not die. I think I wasn't paying too much attention here. He then tags along, and now we have 2 rivals. Yay! Yay for friendship. After that is the Fable Falls, which is very tall, and not much to say there. And then Nikito City, which is home of the first Stadium Star battle, which is just a gym battle, but different because in a stadium. But before you can go there, you have to go meet up with your friends for food, and you fight them indoors despite the person who you're fighting literally saying, "Let's not fight indoors." Then after that, you can go defeat the stadium. On my first time through here, I genuinely did not realize that the building I was in was the stadium, because it just threw me into some random battles in this boxing ring type area, and I just like, oh, I guess this is some side gauntlet thing. Anyways, you beat up the fighting type guy, get a shiny thing, moving on. The next location you go to is the Whispering Woods, which does in fact not whisper. It leads to the Malachite Mines, which is one of my least favorite places in the entire game, because it uses that mechanic from old Pokemon games, where everywhere in the caves was considered to be grass encounters. After exiting the mines, the path to the next route is blocked by a giant rock, so you have to go back into the mines and do a detour and waste some time until the rock gets removed. You find this guy who's really deep in the mines, and he yaps about this mural for a bit, then gives you the ability to see stuff on your map related to weather, and leaves. Doing this wastes enough time for the boulder to be removed so you can access the rest of Kaigan Canyon. Then there's a route that isn't really that interesting, and then you get to Everlush Town, which has a really big restaurant that's actually a stadium, and whoops, we first gotta do a rival battle because yippee! The stadium's kinda cool because it has a little quiz, and you need to figure out what 3 meals this chef guy wants. But the way you find out what meals he wants is just by talking to everyone and then finding the red text, so it's not actually that cool. You then get to fight Dylan, who has the best music in the entire game. You beat up the grass type guy and get a shiny thing, he teaches you how to climb vines for some reason, moving on. You and Kira get a call from the professor on this weird propeller-powered hologram phone thing about meeting someone who I forgot the name of in Flashton because he could really help you with research or something, so you gotta go there next. To get there, you need to go back to the Kaigan Canyon and use a new vine climbing ability to access a new area. This new area has this watery cave and there's not really much in it. And then the watery cave leads you to the Kaigan Cliffs, which is a very snowy area and is the last currently accessible area in the game. But there's actually no story on it, so we're done with this section. It's just a pretty typical Fakemon game, and there's nothing truly wrong with that. But now let's get into the reasons why I hate half of this game. Pretty much everyone I've heard talk about this game has said it looks really good, and to a degree I can agree with that, but as a whole it feels really ugly to me. Pretty much every model in the game uses custom textures, and that's cool. Only using the default Roblox textures can be pretty limiting, but they screwed up somewhere. The best way I can describe it is by using a quote that my friend Luke left in the script while looking at it. It kinda makes me feel like they're trying to make it not look like a Roblox game instead of embracing it, if that makes any sense at all. So they made these pretty detailed textures that in a vacuum I feel like could look good, but here are some examples of how they use them that I just hate. Yes, that is the brick texture on a TV. That is not how TVs work. I don't know if they actually did this, but from the way a lot of these textures look, it kind of feels like they made a bunch of grey textures with transparent backgrounds and put solid colours behind them to just kind of emulate detail. Something about the modelling also kind of bugs me a lot. It's like they have the kind of decent textures from before, and then a lot of the time they'll just put it on completely flat surfaces and just be like, the model is not very complicated because the texture is doing all the work, which... Buildings look really off, I do not vibe with this art style. What the fuck? While I'm on the topic, I guess I can talk about the menus. Most of them are fine, except for the buying screen. What is this? They're a bit kinda clunky feeling, I guess, but you know what, they work, they're fine. Anyways, moving on. This might be a kind of controversial take, but I think a lot of the Tanorians are kind of mid. I do like a handful of them, specifically these ones. These are the ones that I used on my team, but there's so many of them that to me just exist for the sake of existing, I guess is the best way I can explain it. There's so many single stage Tanorians that just feel like filler, and there's not really too much going on with these designs. I feel like they had good ideas going here, but the execution, I just do not like it. The 2 and 3 stage Tanorians are typically better than the 1 stage Tanorians, but still, the modeling does not do them any favors. And even if the modeling did do them favors, a lot of them are just not very interesting to me. On that topic, names. Again, for this, there is some stuff that I do quite like WATSP and USB. They are very creative names. I like them, they flow quite well. But then there is stuff like Molroop and Sungadem. What were you thinking? Also, for this part I was looking through the list of Tanorians, and is it just me, or is this just Chinchino with hearts? On that topic, part 2, I have a very large amount of hatred for whoever they got to make the pixel art for Tanorians in this game. So, like a lot of creature capture games, they use pixel art for the icons in like the PC boxes and stuff. But instead of making them like really tiny detailed pixel arts, they decided to make it really big. Like they tried, but it feels like me when I do it, where I just don't know what I'm doing and I just kind of draw outlines of stuff and fill it in with solid color. This is absolutely a preference thing. Like, if I did not grow up with stuff like Minecraft and Mario Maker, I would not care at all about this, but I do, and it makes me so sad. While I'm on the topic of Tanorians, let's talk about their animations, which vary wildly, with some of them having just kind of alright animations, and then some of them just kind of feeling over-animated compared to some of the other stuff in this game. It seems to me that they had a much harder time animating more bulky Tanorians than they did the more flimsy ones, because like, stuff like this bug that I forgot the name of, they look pretty good because they're just twig legs. But then you look at this battle that happened on TV at the start of the game. Look at this shit. What were they doing? I think this is actually the first video game that I've played ever where I just stopped paying attention to the story after a while. Mainly because these guys do not shut up. I don't mind reading a lot of dialogue, actually I kinda like it in a lot of games. But here, wherever there's dialogue, most of the time, there's voice acting. Inherently, voice acting is not a bad thing, but it really grinds the pace of the game to a halt. Because for you to be able to click to the next dialogue option, you have to wait for the voice acting to finish, and they are slow speakers. Slower than me a lot of the time, honestly. I could have just turned it off, but turning it off was apparently buggy at the time when I played, and it's a feature that's turned on by default, so clearly they want me to enjoy it, so I'm going to enjoy it. Not much happens when people are talking either. Like, there's multiple cutscenes where they're just staring off into the void while talking. Imagine if we did this in real life. From the little bit of story I paid attention to, there was like a meteor, and then a god Tanorian came out of it a really long time ago. And you're working to get out of debt, and this guy wants to be a tamer, but his parents want him to work on their farm. And yeah, that's the game. I think I probably would have appreciated the story a bit more if it wasn't just... You know, for a game that got delayed so much for bug fixing and polishing, I kinda expected there to not be many bugs on my first playthrough, but oh boy, I found quite a few. At some point early on I started keeping track of every bug I found, minor or major, and the list is pretty long now. How long? Just roll the music already. Other players would sometimes appear completely invisible besides their face. Other players clipped into me when I was in the cutscene only I was supposed to be in. The starters were just left sitting around for some reason, and somehow this charcoal ended up on my shoulder. Players would sometimes appear sliding in the ground instead of having their walking animation.
Oh wait, that's you? Why are you in the floor?
Some NPCs would only let you talk to them if you clicked on their arms. The animation for entering a trainer battle would sometimes play twice. The models for your avatar and NPC trainers would sometimes duplicate themselves right as a battle started, and then sometimes they would appear right next to each other. Winning battles sometimes gave me negative money, and a few times it gave me -0 money somehow. At one point I managed to keep the shop menu open while I was moving, and then it allowed me to take it outside and buy items while I was on a route, and then it only went away when I went into a wild battle. Using a mount in Tano Station sometimes shoves you through the floor and makes you fall into the void. Exiting this specific building gets you stuck inside of the collision, requiring you to get unstuck in the options menu. Sometimes NPCs will just not let you talk to them, but they will still turn to face you whenever you click on them. Leaving buildings sometimes makes you fall over. The camera doesn't follow you properly when entering Nikito City. Certain abilities don't have descriptions. When you click on a Tanorian in the party menu, you can't click on anything else unless you press cancel. You can open the menu while in the shop. I clipped through the floor, and then whatever the fuck this is happened. Using a mount, pressing get unstuck, and then going outside can sometimes leave your camera locked like it would be inside. This random wall in the Whispering Woods doesn't have collision, so I could just walk up the side of it and then climb this entire background mountain that for some reason has collision. Nicknames just for some reason don't work. Closing the player list doesn't work because it just keeps on reopening it after a couple of battles. A trainer started walking into a wall after initiating a battle and wouldn't stop until I clicked on them again. I got a Tanorian to negative health and then it went back to positive health after I hit it again. Saluminous got stuck in a T-pose because its animations got corrupted apparently. Swapping a move doesn't update the move description, you have to exit out of the summary screen to update it. There's a couple of grammatical errors, I'm not really sure if this counts as bugs, but I'm putting it here. Random objects have no collision for no reason. Your avatar freaks out when you're climbing a vine. Exiting a wild battle often flips the camera direction, which makes it really easy to get lost. Most of the time when you use a mount, the camera freaks out before the mount spawns. I managed to get the text that appears when you're selecting what Tanorian to use a potion on get stuck at the top of the screen. The amount of uses a move has resets after every battle, which pretty much makes the feature of moves running out of uses useless. I say this is a bug because somewhere in the Discord they said they fixed it, but for the life of me I cannot find the message. The icon for how many Tanorians an enemy trainer has stays visible when evolving a Tanorian. The UI for a Tanorian's menu page takes a second to go away when you exit the menu. Someone else's Tanorian just walked through my battle without the trainer. I used a mount indoors, fell into the void, get unstuck didn't work, so I rejoined the game, and was greeted to this. There was a really bright light that were covering my Jesperit and Snowkit when they were evolving. There is a secret area in the Kaigon Cliffs, and there's supposed to be some unknown secret here, but instead it's just a blue box. During the battle with the corrupted Dandelion, its stats continued to be lowered every turn even after it reached -6 where it couldn't lower anymore. Yeesh, that is a lot of bugs. Keep in mind, I didn't go out of my way to make any of these happen, they just kinda occurred to me, and there's probably a lot more that I just didn't notice that happened. None of these really ruined my experience, but a lot of them were really annoying, like when it shoved me into the ground and I had to leave the game, or when the camera kept on flipping after I exited a battle. It makes me wonder, did they actually playtest this game? Like, I feel like so many of these things that I found would have been caught if they got people to playtest it. It's just really strange. This is the part of the video where I just ramble about extra stuff that I had to say that didn't really fit into the other categories. This game wasn't particularly difficult, which is probably a good thing because right now it only goes up to the second battle stadium, but it was really annoying to beat as I had to make multiple trips back to Tana stations, and potions in this game suck, so I couldn't use those. The most expensive one is the only one worth getting because all of the other ones heal fractions of your health instead of set numbers. You ever thought Oran berries in Pokemon were useless? Try using the first tier potions on your starter early game. They're also really expensive. I could only afford to get like 9 or 10 of them throughout my entire playthrough. On the topic of this game not being particularly difficult, I defeated over half of the grass type Stadium Stars team with the water starter. You know, the one that's deathly allergic to plants? So many buildings in this game just don't have interiors, which makes the major cities really feel like small and explorable within 5 minutes, which is kinda unfortunate because this is supposed to feel like a big city here, but there's like 3 places to go to. Overworld encounters are really whack. I found barely any of them in the first half of the game, and then I think they might have boosted the odds of them a tiny bit when I played through the second half because I found a lot more of them. I like overworld encounters far more than the random grass ones, not only because it's cool to see exactly what you're gonna get before you encounter them, but I didn't think it was possible to make a worse wild grass encounter animation than Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearls, but they did it. I'm not really a big fan of the design of Tanokans or the way they're animated. You barely see them, so this is like the world's least big issue, but like, I don't care, I'm still gonna complain about it. I really dislike the NPCs being the blocky avatars. It feels more like Roblox than something like Lumion Legacy's NPCs, but I really hate them being used as NPCs. I genuinely don't know what it is. I don't mind players using them, but I really hate it when they're used for NPCs. I guess it's just the way they're animated. At least right now, the Tamers Plus Game Pass does not seem worth it at all to me. It's just a bunch of one-time items and a bit of cosmetic stuff. The other in-game purchases, which are incenses, seem really expensive for what they give. For 10 to 15 minutes of hunting, it's 250 Robux, or like $3 or $4. So unless you're just using this to get the other 2 starters and then never buying one of these again, it's probably not worth it. I really hate whoever they had make the trailers and directs. So much of their runtime was just the camera panning around the overworld, not really showing much. They're also really slow paced, which is kind of strange. Like, I would expect something like a launch trailer to be a short and concise recap of stuff coming in the game, but no, it's just like an extra 7 minutes of new stuff. They literally just have a poll of what they should reveal in it. They made a theme song for this game. Before the game released, they said that this game would have about 5 hours of playtime so far, just from the main story. I have about 9.5 hours, so they're not wrong. It did have over 5 hours of playtime. Was it fun playtime? Not for a lot of it, honestly. There was quite a lot of it where I was just going back and grinding, or I was backtracking, or I was just sitting in a cutscene. So yeah, you're not wrong, it was over 5 hours, but it wasn't very fun 5 hours. So, in the end, did I have fun? Yeah, I had a decent bit of fun. I still have a lot of problems with the game, as you can probably tell. This video was just talking about all of my problems, but it was kind of fun. It's been a decently long time since I played an entirely new creature capture game, so it was fun experiencing a slightly new take on stuff, even if it was kind of scuffed. I think the game has quite a lot of potential, but who knows if they're going to use it or not. There's a lot that needs improving with the current state of the game, but from what I've seen the devs saying on Discord, it seems like this will just be the standard for the game going forward, which is kind of unfortunate. But hey, that's just my opinion. You might think the game is really polished. It's okay to be wrong. This is the internet, of course people are going to disagree on stuff. I doubt I'll be making much more content on this game. I'll probably still play it every so often, but it just does not feel like the type of game I'd want to spend time making videos for. Even after all of this though, props to the devs for getting a game out. Making a game is hard, this is the best I could do. But it's still kinda mid, C tier.